decided to interrupt my regular upload queue because here is something you're not going to see very often. This is an A-32 match in a tier 4 game. That means it's top tier. Of course, this isn't me playing, this is Ansith. I don't have an A-32, I wish I did have one. He's not new to the game, he's been playing since beta. We used to play a lot together, but he has only recently started playing again after a very long break. So you will see a bit of misplays here and there, but he does do a pretty good job considering. Now, looking at the A-32, it's slightly smaller than the T-34. It's about halfway between the A-20 and the T-34 in terms of size. It's quite fast. Its armor's not very good. Let's look at his gun. So, your AP rounds do 105 alpha, 66 pen. Only 75 pen on the gold rounds, which are heat rounds. So of course they don't normalize. 110 alpha. So you gain 5 alpha with heat rounds, which is interesting. Not many tanks do that anymore. And then the HE rounds, well, they're HE, but the gun is basically a derp gun. So he heads over here and has a surprise visit from the 2G, which luckily doesn't get any shots into him. He gets one into it. And then a 127 turns up. Now you can see the A-32's armor isn't terrible. It is bouncing both AP and some APCR from the 127. That one hit his track, but you can see that. APCR just bounced straight off. But then here Ansith starts bouncing his rounds and the T127 stops bouncing. So a bit of a mistake there. He should have pulled in behind a building earlier, but a lot of these tanks are alien to him. They weren't in the game the last time we played it, so I can understand sitting out there trying to DPM it down. So you can see here he's kind of trying to side scrape, but he hasn't quite got the angle right, so his front plate's still exposed. Thankfully he does get the T127, then a Hetzer turns up. Bounces off the Hetzer, hesitates for a second, but then rams it into the building. Which is the right move. Poor Hetzer doesn't know what to do. You can see the rate of fire on this little derp gun is quite good. Gun handling is not the best, but again, it is a derp gun. He has a 30 down there, which will no doubt be spotting for the stuff across the ridgeline. I'm not sure if Ansith even actually played this map much before, so I'm not sure if he'd know the sort of pubby meta of TDs hell camping that ridge. Either way, he's trying to avoid getting seen by the 38 NA for a while, but then decides, fuck it. And he goes to dive on it. You can see here, he's not going to drive all the way in. He's going to stop and take a few shots at a distance. Now, he is actually manually aiming these, which is impressive to me because he's driving at the same time and he has a higher ping than I usually do. So you can see here, he does take a shot from across the map and decides to back out. And then with the support of the LTP, he decides to take on the 38T. The LTP takes it, leaving Ansith free to cross the field. You can see this is quite a fast little tank, 60 kilometers an hour, quite happily. Its cornering ability doesn't seem too bad. Certainly better than my BT-SV. Now, just as a reminder, this is a medium tank. It's not a light tank. So it doesn't maintain camo on the move like an A-20 will. Ansith manages to take the Priest without getting shotgunned. LTP finishes it off. And now it's 3 tanks and an Arty on his team versus a lot of enemies. So in the interest of trying to get a win, he goes to finish off the last Arty. or at least the last one you can see. The Lorraine fails a shotgun there, and he manages to get a shot into it. Not sure why chat doubles up in other people's replays, it never does it in mine. Anyway, he heads into the cap. See, A-32s are quite rare. The enemy team seem incredulous to see one. In fact, I think I've seen one person other than Ansith actually play the A-32. Ansith also has a Panzer 5.4, same as me. Neither of us have the clown shoe. So here, a 2G turns up. Now, Ansith doesn't know about this thing. I neglected to tell him it has a tier 5 gun, but thankfully he does manage to rack it before it can get another burst in. And, of course, I didn't tell him either not to move when you're on cap in a medium tank. Now, if this was an A20, he would be able to get away with this because light tanks maintain full camo while they're moving. However, the A-32, being a medium tank, does lose camo if you move it. And so by doing this, he's actually lighting himself up to the enemy, which almost could have been disastrous. But thankfully their B2 was just a little too slow on that shot, and his second one bounced. So, not a bad match. There are a few spots he certainly could have played a bit better, but given the circumstances, namely coming back to World of Tanks after about 3 years not playing it, he didn't do too badly. A-32 is a pretty zippy little tank. It does get preferential matchmaking, so it can only see tier 5. Combined with its speed and its small size, it actually is quite a decent little thing. I really wish I had one. It looks like it'd be a lot of fun to play. It's almost like an A20 except not as gimped and with decent matchmaking. The gun on it does seem somewhat effective. It doesn't have very good pen, but the reload speed is quite good for a derp. It kind of reminds me of the 7.5 L24 that the Panzer III can get. Not a particularly brilliant gun, but the handling's not awful, and the reload is quite nice. And when you're top tier like this, you know, that's all the pen you need. You won't need more than about 50 or 60 pen for a lot of these tanks, and 105, 110 damage is a significant chunk of their hit point pulls. Obviously the HE is fairly useless, but that's true of most of the smaller derp guns. It's only when you get to the really large ones like the 122s and the 152s that it becomes useful. So I hope you've enjoyed this little sneak peek at a very rare tank to see playing, especially to actually watch from its perspective and see it in action as top tier. Ansith has been pestering me to play more with him, so maybe you'll see more of this, maybe not, I don't know. I really hope at some point Wargaming throw this thing up for sale. I mean, it would probably draw the ire of everyone who actually pre-ordered one, but I just really wish I could have this little thing. It seems like a barrel of laughs. And now you can be jealous with me.